seats, or the most votes?
It's the votes and seats, which Nick Clegg said today, and I'm not going to speculate on every single scenario. And you can ask me this question as many times as you want.
Just one scenario.
But what is important to us, and we've been very clear about it, here are our big four priorities. We're going to campaign on those. We're going to try to get every vote and every member of Parliament. And then, when we know what the result is, the people are the kingmakers, then we will do our best to form a stable government
Andy,
and to promote those policies.
I've given up on this question.
Good. Now let's talk about the policies that people are interested in.
Well, more importantly, we're going to maybe talk about the debate and how you've been aping David Cameron in the...
Yes, I mean, it's no secret anymore. That's due to somebody's
debates.
briefing that I've been doing the David Cameron role. And I tell you, it's been quite difficult, actually, Andrew, because I thought I'd got...
A lot of people say it's quite easy, because you're
well,
probably
I
politics more
thought
aligned
I'd
to his than Nick
got
Clegg's.
what the economic policy of the Conservative Party was and the briefing. I was talking about responsibility and an era of austerity. And then suddenly in the last 10 days, we've got tax cuts going all over the place. So I think that David Cameron is a good communicator. I hope I was trying to do a good job. But the message is awfully mangled.
I tell you what, I just want to ask you one other question, because we're about to go back up to the northeast to hear from students who've been listening to what you've got to say. And so the policy on tuition fees, that is, it's still our policy, but it's just way, way in the long, deep grass.
It's phasing those tuition fees out over 6 years, starting in the first year by phasing them out for final year students. And I think students...
So if you're 12 now, you might see the benefit of it in 6 years' time when
you're
18?
No, you won't. If you're at university and you're going to be in the final year at university in next year, you will see the benefit, because in that year you won't have fees levied on you. And I'm sorry, but we do at a time when everybody knows the public finances are in a total mess. If we said we could solve all these and scrap them, nobody would believe us.
For the moment, thank you very much indeed. Let's go back now to our North East political editor, Richard Moss, who's with a group of students outside NUS conference at the Sage in Gateshead. Richard.
Thanks, John. Well, they've been listening to David Laws, but I've got somebody who's in the enviable position of actually having won an election already. That's Aaron here, who's been elected as the NUS President-elect. Congratulations.
Thanks very much.
I was a bit rude about students before, saying that perhaps they're more interested in counting down the Communist Manifesto these days. Are they apathetic?
Definitely not. I think the issue, particularly with tuition fees, but also the way in which students are not being engaged in the political process, is something that's starting to rile us. And frankly, the fact that there's been an absence of discussion as to why any of the parties are doing enough for young people, or indeed anyone in education, is starting to see students register in greater numbers before, and actually pushing politicians to ensure that they're actually delivering for students rather than just talking at them.
No wonder you got elected. Anyway, let's hear from some of the other students as well about some questions you might have for David Laws. Kate, I think you had something you wanted to ask him.
I did, yes. Given that in 2005, only around 35% of young voters actually bothered to go out and vote in the election, it shows that there is still some kind of distinct apathy in the student body. I was wondering what the Liberal Democrats would say about how they would encourage young people to go out and vote, if not for them, just for anyone at all.
And John, you also wanted to ask something in particular.
The Liberal Democrat Manifesto seems to be quite light on further education policy. Just wondering what the Liberal Democrats would do for FE and whether they protect the education maintenance allowance.
You've had time to study the manifesto today, have you?
Yes.
Good grief, you are busy. Rachel, what about you? What do you make of the campaign so far? Anything you want to know?
Coming back on how important FE is, I want to know how important votes for 16-year-olds is going to be with the Liberal Democrats.
OK, and Andy, have you got any burning questions for David Laws? This is your moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Liberal Democrats say that they're going to phase out tuition fees within 6 years. I'm just wondering if they think that that's people who aren't the benefit of higher education going to be paying for the people that are actually going, but don't need to pay.
Good point. And Aaron, you particularly want to know perhaps what might happen in a hung parliament.
Yeah, well, I mean, clearly the issue of tuition fees has been a big vote winner for the Liberal Democrats, and their position would appear to be really appetising for students. Can we get an assurance from the Liberal Democrats that this would be something they would be prepared to make as a deal breaker in the event of a hung parliament with either Labour or the Conservatives?
What do the National Union of Students believe on tuition fees now? Because I did talk to one delegate who I must admit was standing by the Socialist Worker stand, but he said that the union has rather sort of betrayed its membership because he believes there should be free education. All the MPs at the moment got a free university education, but you're actually just saying don't put tuition fees up.
Well, debate is always live and kicking in the National Union of Students, but over the last 2 years we've ensured that we've come to the centre of the debate, and that's to say that we would object to any rise in fees. However, we think there can be a fair alternative altogether, and that should be a progressive contribution based on a graduate tax model.
Well, you've got to hear from the students there, John. Let's see what David Laws has got to say to them.
OK, Richard, thank you very much indeed for that. Well, where do you want to pick up on that? I don't know, which one should we start on? Well, what about encouraging young people to vote, for a start?
I think that we encourage young people to vote when we demonstrate that there are real choices between the parties and that we're not just saying what everybody wants to hear. And I think when young people look at our manifesto today, they'll not only see some policies that they like. One of the young people mentioned the voting age issue.
Give a non-partisan answer. Surely it's more important that people vote, whether it's for you or whether it's for the Tories.
Of course it is, but they will vote when they think it will make a difference and when they believe that parties are actually putting forward serious policies. And if they think that we're trying to persuade them that they can have lots of extra benefits and lower taxes, but this is simply going to be painless, they will actually believe there's nothing different between the political parties. That's why credibility is important.
And what about the bit about further education?
Further education is incredibly important, particularly given the current situation with around 1 million young people unemployed. Is there much in the manifesto?
This chap who was looking at it said he couldn't find much in the manifesto about it.
There is a lot in the manifesto. Firstly, that we're going to keep the education maintenance allowance, which was one of the questions. But secondly, we're going to divert money from one programme that the government has got called Train to Gain, which essentially is a very badly directed subsidy for employers, and route some of that money into further education to help some of the people who are being hit by the recession.
OK. David Laws, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Andy, Jackie, both of you, thanks ever so much for being with us here on the Campaign Show. Just to say that you can get in touch with us either by email at campaignshow@bbc.co.uk or you can text us on 61124. We'd be delighted to hear your views on what you've heard so far. Just to say, coming up in the programme, we're looking forward, of course, to tomorrow's Prime Ministerial debate with Labour's John Prescott, former Tory leader Ian Duncan-Smith. For one, you might have to turn up the volume. The other one, you might have to turn the volume down a little bit. Anyway, David Laws is also going to be staying with us, as we've been hearing. He's playing David Cameron at at a pantomime near you. Anyway, now time for the weather with John Hammond. Hello, John.
Thanks very much, John. Yes, well, Laura Coonsberg looked pretty chilly on College Green this morning, I noticed, and I think she will again tomorrow morning because it is cold out there at the moment, particularly under the clear skies. Temperatures are falling away quite quickly. There will be some encroachment of cloud as we go through the night, particularly across the more central and eastern parts of England. That'll arrest the temperature fall. But under the clearer skies, yes, we could well see a touch of frost yet again in rural areas. These are towns and city temperatures, remember. Clouding up across parts of Scotland as well, but bar the odd spot of drizzle, it will be a dry start to the day. And I'm hopeful this cloud will get nibbled away by the sun, which means that by the afternoon, most places in England will be fine. Northern half of Scotland too, but for Northern Ireland, some northern counties of England, it'll stay disappointingly grey, and that will have a knock-on effect on the temperatures. Just 9, for example, in Newcastle, up to 14 or 15, where the sun comes out further south. As we go through tomorrow night, the cloud will continue to topple its way southwards, followed by clearer skies, but again it stays dry, and that dry theme takes us through to the weekend. Through the weekend, in actual fact, it will start to turn noticeably cooler. That's it, more detail in half an hour.
Hello, you're watching BBC News with me, Clive Myrie. Back to the Campaign Show in a moment, but first, the main headlines. And the Liberal Democrats have unveiled their election manifesto. The party's leader, Nick Clegg, pledged to make Britain fairer should his party get into power. Among the LibDem proposals, an increase in the state pension and making the first £10,000 of income tax-free for low and middle earners. Labour and the Conservatives both say the Liberal Democrats' plans just don't add up. Opposition parties have seized on Gordon Brown's admission that he should have been tougher on the banks when he was Chancellor. The Conservatives called the Prime Minister's remarks an extraordinary admission. The Liberal Democrats said it was the biggest mistake in modern British history. British scientists have discovered a new fertility technique which they hope could prevent a range of rare inherited diseases. Researchers created embryos using DNA from a man and 2 women to try and reduce the risk of mothers passing on serious genetic disorders to their children. Now, back to John and the Campaign Show.
Welcome back to Westminster. So all eyes on the big match. 90 minutes and everything to play for. And we're not just talking about Spurs being 2-0 up against Arsenal. Ian Duncan-Smith cheering that and maybe to John Sopel as well. The first goal, an absolute belter, has to be a contender for goal of the season. But there is an historic match taking place tomorrow night too. Less important, of course, the party leaders, Brown, Cameron, Clegg, take part in the first ever prime ministerial debate. So, game-changing moment, or will it all be a bit of a letdown? Well, joining me now is the former Conservative Party leader, Ian Duncan-Smith. David Laws of the Libdems is still with us, and John Prescott, who substituted for Blair longer than Alex Douglas-Hume, I think, did who was serving as Prime Minister at the time. Anyway, John Prescott, Ian Duncan-Smith, great to have you with us, and David Laws, thanks for staying with us. Ian Duncan-Smith, do you think it will be a game-changing moment?
I'm not so sure. I've seen all the American presidential debates, and I enjoy watching them, but I must say, most of them now, they're pretty rehearsed almost to death, really, to the point that everyone's more and more scared about saying something wrong rather than taking a risk. Everybody refers back to the great Nixon-Kennedy clash. But actually, it's interesting about that was because, of course, those who heard it on radio gave it to Nixon. Those who saw him on television gave it to Kennedy. So the substance was with Nixon, but the look was with Kennedy. So I don't think you're going to have that problem. So I think it's going to... I don't have high expectations. I think it'll be fascinating as the first one, but I don't expect to see any major loser in it.
John Prescott, I'm interested in your view, because I heard Neil Kinnock going on the TV on Sunday saying